Hello everyone. I just want to make a really quick recording to talk about the Mayweather-McGregor fight and what's been happening on social media. So right now, if you can see my screen, I've logged into Social Studio and I've set up a workspace and some listening keywords for the Mayweather versus McGregor fight. So without any further ado, let's just jump in and have a look and see what people have been saying. So as you know, this has really been the fight of the century. McGregor from a UFC perspective and Mayweather from boxing. I think everyone was really excited to see what was going to happen on the day. Personally, I thought the fight was really exciting. We had, McGregor came out really strong, fighting southpaw. He was doing an amazing job, and then I think ultimately the longer fight duration of boxing really took over in the end. So we can see on Social Studio, this is a dashboard that I've set up already, and this is just looking at August 27th, 28th. So if I zoom out a bit and we can look at the entire fight, so if I say from Thursday until today, we get a real feel for the entire trend over the last week and what kind of volumes we're looking at. So just wait for that to load. So we're looking at 11 million posts. So there's a huge conversation trend that's been happening about this fight. If we look at the sentiment trend or the trend of mentions, you can see McGregor's actually in the orange and Mayweather's in the dark blue. So at the peak, Mayweather actually had, so McGregor had about 3.9 million mentions at the peak, and Mayweather had, click on that, slightly more, 4.2 million. So he actually had more mentions, and even the day after, he still retained that lead in terms of mentions. I'm just going to zoom in though, because we want to have a real look at that fight day. So if we just zoom in on the Sunday the 27th. So that's loading up now. So the dashboard I've set up, I've got the total post volume. This really talks about how many mentions there were during that period. So we had 7.4 million mentions on the day of the fight. We can see most of those conversations were actually happening on Twitter. But there's also comments, forum replies, Facebook posts. Obviously, Facebook's not 100% captured because it's mostly a private network. There were 5,900 blogs, 5,000 Instagram posts. So it's really all over the internet. And this is a really interesting trend. So we can see that on the day of the fight, it got to about 2 p.m. And that was when the fight started in my time zone in Sydney. 3 p.m. it really spiked up. 4 p.m. it probably hit its peak. And then it started dropping again until later that night. And I believe this is when the repeats were on at about 10 p.m. on public viewing. So really interesting how you see that sentiment trend. And if we look at the total volume, it actually really dwarfs the sentiment. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to this and show you a bit more about what exactly happened. So we can see that there was a lot of volume that started here, a lot of sentiment. But that was actually really dwarfed in the after-match discussion. So I think this is really when it became available to view on normal TV. And you can see it spikes dramatically up. That's quite an interesting finding. If we look into who had the total share of mentions, so we can see the dark blue is actually, this is actually Mayweather, and the orange is McGregor. So McGregor had 48.3% of the mentions, whereas Mayweather had 51.7%. So that's quite interesting. So Mayweather, not only did he win the fight, but he actually also won the social media race. And you can see this trend here. McGregor actually does quite well at 2 p.m., but he drops below Mayweather, and then Mayweather takes the lead. Also down here, looking at, here were some of the top keywords. So this column across, or row across here is really McGregor. So these are the top words mentioned during that day. So obviously you can see there was a lot of talk about the referee stopping the fight, his defeat, his upset, a lot of emotional keywords here. And if we look at the sentiment for just McGregor, 49.3% actually negative and 50.7% positive. So there's a lot of opinions on both sides. McGregor garnered 3.9 million mentions. And interestingly, so the countries, obviously US was really big, UK was kind of the third under unknown. We also see Mayweather. So Mayweather's the next row. So if you look at this, Mayweather actually had more mentions from the UK than McGregor did, which is quite interesting. Yeah, so Mayweather actually got 4.2 million mentions, so he definitely led. And he had a higher percentage of positive mentions to McGregor. So he had 52.2% positive compared to 47.8%. So, I mean, you can say all around the stats really describe the reality. Mayweather won the fight in real life, but he also won it on social media. I'm just going to dip into a workbench, which will give me a little bit more access to do some analysis. So this is a workbench I've set up earlier. The workbench in Social Studio is really, it just allows us to drill in, do really detailed data analysis. So I'm just going to look at the Sunday again. So this is pulling the same data. And I've set this up already, so it's showing me a few things. It's showing me, so there's 6 million posts on that day. Just wait a second for it to load. This will show me the top hashtags used. Already I've got the volume trend, so I can kind of see the volume here at 2 p.m. is really spiking. And I'm just going to drill in on that and see if I can show some images of what's actually going on in that time. I'm also going to show some top words as well, so we get a better feel. Great. So we see here. I mean, here are the keywords from Colin McGregor from that peak. Okay, great. So this is really at that 2 p.m. where that peak was. This is the top 50 keywords that were being used. And it sounds like everyone is just tweeting and saying, you know, like fight, it's fight time. If I look an hour later, and let's have a look at the top words an hour later and see how they're progressing. Great, round one. So people are talking about it defeating TKO, Floyd Mayweather, highlights, win in the 10th. Okay, so this is really during the fight, right at the end of the fight, this is what people are talking about. So really, really quite an interesting thing that's happening on social. You know, this is really a fight of the century. And you can see some of the top hashtags used on the day, hashtag sports, hashtag boxing. And let's just drill into some of these images. Oh, it's only picked up one image for some reason on that trend. So generally, that's what's happened on the day. I mean, you can see there's a huge volume. What I'd really like to see over the next few days is the commentary around the fight. I think there's, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how people are going to be starting to ask for a rematch or a next action from the fighters. Great. Well, if you've got any questions about this, please don't hesitate to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Robin_AFD, or visit our website, afdigital.com, and find out a bit more about us. Bye.